For Honor is the most frustrating game of 2017, and possibly the most frustrating game of all time. Even more so than Dark Souls, this game has made me rage and scream and nearly break my controller 10 times over. Now let's be clear, For Honor isn't a bad game. In fact, I'd say it's a great game. If I had to rate it as a competitive team-based game, I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10. The combat is so deep and intricate, and when you lose a fight, it only makes you want to go back into practice mode and try to figure out how you lost and what you can do to be better. If you haven't played it, For Honor is a competitive medieval melee combat fighting game, and while I found the story mode lacking, the main game is just playing these various multiplayer modes like duels, 2v2, 4v4s, or King of the Hill style games. I really like that the game has some RPG elements as well. You can level up your characters by playing them and get different gear and perks for them. Now, the gear itself doesn't seem to have too profound of an impact on gameplay. Most gear basically boosts secondary stats like throw distance and run speed. This isn't like an MMO where you can stack max attack power and just one-shot people who have worse gear than you. Regardless of everything else, the main star of the game is its combat. On the surface, the game may look like a pretty standard hack and slash, but there is so much more to it. You can control the direction of your attacks, either high, left, or right, and at the same time you can adjust the direction you're guarding in, meaning you'll block attacks coming in from that direction. On top of that, you can either dodge attacks to avoid them or parry them to throw your opponent off balance. Different situations call for evading attacks in different ways. As if that wasn't enough, you also have guard breaks, essentially grabs, which you can use when an opponent is being overly defensive. You have light and heavy attacks, and you can chain these attacks in different ways. Each character, which there are 12 of, has their own chains and their own combos and special moves, so when it gets down to it, For Honor is almost like a fighting game. I especially love the amount of detail they put into when your character gets hit. Wounds and damage to armor appear on your character based on where they got hit, so by the end of a lengthy battle, your character's armor will just look shredded and you'll be covered in blood. But it's not without its infuriating problems. You have all this intricate combat that you could spend hours a day trying to master, or you could just push people off a cliff. Forget actually knowing how to fight, just shove people into pits. It's one of the easiest things to do. Just press one button to perform a grab and shove them down a hole. Now, while the grab can be countered, the timing to do so is so specific that it's basically impossible to pull off reliably for anyone without that split-second reflex. And I swear, even when I feel like I counter a grab at the right moment, it only works about 10% of the time. Now, to be fair, Ubisoft has said they are addressing this and making it easier to counter the grabs, but as it stands, the game feels almost unplayable at times when you get opponents who just love to spam that guard break button. It doesn't help that there are classes that can just carry you across the map and throw you into a hole on the other side while you flail helplessly. Some of the duel maps are absolutely ridiculous. They'll just be a bridge, and you know there is basically a 50% chance you'll lose, not because of any amount of skill involved with either person, but just based on who can press the guard break first. I can't help but feel that the game needs to be tweaked in other ways as well. Playing defensively is just too strong. If you're up against an opponent who's good at blocking and countering guard breaks, there's basically nothing you can do to hurt them. Even with 2 or 3 people beating on them, they are basically unkillable. And in fact, if you have that many people attacking one opponent, you'll probably lose because of the game's revenge mode. Basically, to balance out being swarmed by opponents, you have this revenge meter, which fills up faster depending on how many people are attacking you. Once it's full, you can activate it to make all of your attacks uninterruptible and do significantly more damage for a short period of time, on top of gaining an overshield to your HP bar. It feels so wrong that in a 2v1 situation, the person at the disadvantage has just as much of a chance to win. Now, I feel like the idea of a revenge mode isn't itself bad, but it just shouldn't happen so quickly and just give such a massive bonus to your stats. It makes me question if I should actually help my allies out when they're fighting someone one-on-one, because I know the opponent will just get revenge mode and be twice as hard to kill. I also feel like some classes are just a bit imbalanced. The heavy classes, for example, the super defensive tank classes just seem to do way too much damage. A Shugoki can kill me in 3 hits, while at the same time having uninterruptible armor and the ability to regenerate his health. Wardens have this nearly infinite combo of just shoulder rushing you to stun you, hitting you with an attack, and then shoulder rushing you again. Now, you can dodge out of it, but if they get you up against a wall, it doesn't feel like there's anything you can do. I also found that the game's ratings of which classes are harder to play to be a little bit odd. It rates the Warden as easy, but the Orochi as hard, when after playing the Orochi for a short time, I found it to be significantly easier. And speaking of Orochi, Ubisoft, you know that you might have a problem when it's pretty common to get into a game where half the players on both teams are the same class. Do you think that maybe Orochi might just be a tad overtuned? Some things about the game modes themselves also have me questioning their design. For example, Dominion mode. Now this is basically the most played mode. It's a mix of King of the Hill, Team Deathmatch, and even has some MOBA elements. But the thing that really confuses me is the point system. The goal of this mode is to get 1,000 points, and once your team does, the other team stops respawning. There are 3 capture nodes, and capturing one grants you about 1 point per second. Now on top of that, just having a node grants 100 points, and that is given to the other team if they recapture that node. Now you would expect to get a decent amount of points for killing other players since combat is basically the focal point of the game. But guess how many points you get for doing that? Fucking 5. 5 points for killing another player. It's easier and faster points to just farm the AI minions in the center of the map. It's more efficient for points to just stand on a node that you've captured, because when standing on a node you gain an additional point per second, meaning in about 3 seconds of just standing around doing nothing, you gain more points than actually killing another player. If you want to win in Dominion, the best thing to do is avoid other players and just stand around on nodes, or farm minions. It's so counterintuitive to what the game is supposed to be about. Killing a player should be worth at least 5 times as many points as they currently are. And killing them doesn't even get them out of the way really, because the respawn timer is so short and the maps are so small that anyone you kill is just going to be back in the same spot 20 seconds later. I can't help but feel like elimination mode has its problems too. This is basically a 4v4 duel kind of thing. Generally you start off isolated facing a single opponent, and once you kill them then you go and find the rest of your team. This would probably be my favorite mode, as it's just about fighting enemy players. But I can't help but feel like it's ruined by the power-ups that litter the map. Why are there so many power-ups, and why are they so powerful? Half the time my opponent just runs off at the start of the duel and grabs a power-up, then comes to fight me. If I'm not lucky enough to start off by a good power-up, I'm pretty much screwed. It's so fucking stupid. What do power-ups add to the game, other than for a losing player to grab a significant advantage, like doubling their HP? One thing that kind of puzzles me is some of the game's orders. Now, these are basically little quests to do something in a certain mode for bonus experience. Most of the time these are fine. Go kill 20 people, go win 5 duels, whatever. But some are just stupid, like go kill 400 minions. Why? Why make me do that? It just turns things into an absolute grind. It isn't fun or engaging. Or orders that make me fight the AI. I don't really want to fight the AI. I want to play against other players. Why is the game trying to make me fight the AI all the time? Story mode is a whole other bag of worms that I don't really want to get into. It just feels so tacked on and lacking, very linear levels with the only purpose being so Ubisoft can boast that they have a story mode. The game also has plenty of bugs and lag. Because it doesn't have dedicated servers, for some reason, you rely on other people's shitty internet to host games. Every time someone leaves a game, you have to sit at a loading screen, and this happens all the time and in the middle of combat. It can be so laggy and choppy at times, which is just going to get you killed in the most frustrating way possible. There are also some pretty game-breaking bugs, shit like enemies not being attackable or killing yourself with your own fucking abilities. But despite everything I've said, I still like the game. It does microtransactions right. You can spend real money on in-game currency, but you can earn that in-game currency from just playing. Ubisoft has also said that future DLC will all be free, and the people who bought season passes just get to play a bit earlier and get some extra cosmetics. I really like this. I don't feel pressured to spend money. And at its core, the gameplay and combat is still really good. Even though I've complained about it a lot, I still enjoy 90% of the fights I get into. It's really only the guard break spammers or the people who abuse power-ups who kind of ruin it for me. I would recommend maybe holding off a little on purchasing For Honor. wait until a few bugs have been fixed and a few classes balanced out, which Ubisoft has already talked about doing in the next patch. Maybe we'll even get dedicated servers at some point, who knows. Tell me what you think of For Honor in the comments. Anyway, I'm Cothrix, and you have a wonderful day.